Okay, let's do it. So with the briefing, before I jump, first you got to take into account the winds. So let's have a look at the winds as I have them set up. This is the main landing area. It looks like a big guppy. It's a not a huge field, but it is big enough. You just don't have a lot of outs. So the wind, in this case, I set it up pretty simple, parallel to the runway. The wind at altitude is also parallel to the runway, and the exit point should be down the other side of the runway, and the holding area therefore would be upwind of the target somewhere out this way, and the landing pattern, rather than going across the runway and on in, we're going to do the opposite, left-hand traffic pattern. That'll look, given these winds, it'll probably look something like this. Now on these long skinny landing areas, it's really common for people to kind of sort of skip their base leg because they don't want to be flying too far away from the target area when they're on the downwind. I get that, but it also messes up your accuracy. I'm going to do a nice boxy square pattern and demonstrate the benefits of a landing pattern that has a fourth point, I call the D point. So the secret here is that it's going to allow for you to fly this pre-base leg. Get started with the simulation. I'm using the desktop version of it, so that allows me to do turns right and left using the A and D keys. So this is great for instructors. So heading back towards the drop zone, if I wanted to do a fast turn, I hold down the A key, it's a slow turn, but if I hit the space bar, it's a faster turn, right? So obviously for a flare, you wouldn't just want to pull a little bit, you want to pull it all. So you can simply hold down the space bar key on final approach and then flare the canopy all the way down to full brakes. 4,600 feet. Currently I am upwind of the target a little bit, but not real far, because I kind of goofed off and flew downwind in relatively strong upper winds. So a couple of the really cool things that you can bring up here is, number one, I can hit the number 2 key. First thing, where am I going? So that little dot on the ground is where I am, and where I'm headed is that direction, but where? Let's find out. So that's the projected landing point. So the glide ratio when I face into the wind, which I'm pretty close to into the wind right now, is not as flat as it would be on a no-wind scenario, and not nearly as flat as it's going to be when I turn into a run right now. There's a little glide ratio in the turn, right? You can see the point move closer, and now it's going to learn very quickly. Wow, dramatic difference in the sight picture. If I was too far away, I could add some brakes, and that extends my distance. If I add deep brakes, which I'm now going to do, deep brakes, whoa, look how far I'm going to go. That's like New Hampshire. So I have the ability to go really far with the wind, and I think it's important to note that when you're in the door and people are yelling go, 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 if there's any significant wind and the aircraft's heading is facing into the wind, you don't have to rush out of the door. Take your time leaving the plane. Another great lesson is, so I just turned on the relative wind. These, people call them snowflakes, these little bubbles are demonstrating where I'm going through the atmosphere. So that angle is what I feel the relative wind coming from, right? So that's the aerodynamics that my parachute uses to flare and maneuver and all that. And then the net result of the synergy between my ground speed, my glide ratio, and the wind is going to determine that green dot on the ground, right? That is my relative glide. So true glide ratio is where the bubbles come from, and relative glide in this case is a little steeper than my true glide ratio. So 3,000 feet, I'm still upwind of the target, so I'm going to take a moment, turn 90 degrees, and let's have a look at what things are doing when I'm 90 degrees to the wind line. So the relative wind is still coming from the front, but I'm drifting to my right side, and that's because the wind is drifting me in that direction. It's not changing the aerodynamics of my canopy. It doesn't change the ability to flare the parachute. It can still fly straight in a flare, but it will drift sideways. So that's one of the things you have to recognize in a crosswind landing, is that when you flare, watch that green dot, boom, it drifts further to the right. So it changes your drift angle when you do a crosswind landing. And so you kind of have to lean towards the wind. What I teach is that rather than steering your parachute with the toggles into the wind, I think it's far better to lean on a leg strap. So if I was going to be a little bit crosswind, let's say I was heading in this direction on landing, and when I flare, it's going to drift to my left. You can see the arrow drift further towards the left. Rather than sliding sideways like that during my flare, I can look right as I'm flaring, flare with symmetry, but lean on my right leg strap and land on my right foot. And that's going to really, really help to dial things in. So 2,300 feet, I'm going to start coming a little closer. You don't want to rush back towards the target. Remember, you can always extend the glide ratio of the canopy when you're in a run. As long as you stay close to the wind line, you can always add those brakes and extend how far you're going to go. But if you come back to the target too soon, too high, you might end up not being able to make it to the target because you have to fight the wind, as it were, to get there. So here's the pattern I'm intending. So I'm in the holding area. I'm in a good location, and I'm going to stay a little bit left here so I can enter this pattern from the pond side. So I don't have to do a 180-degree turn to get back into that pattern. So I'm going to look around for traffic all the time. I don't need to keep this on, and I'm just going to fly a really nice pattern and see how it does. Now, of course, first jump of the day, you have a pretty good pattern in your mind, but it may not turn out to be perfect. And so you might have to dial it in on the second jump. So right now I'm in a pretty good location. I want to be at 1,200 feet, turning into the wind, looking for traffic. I'm going to hold position into the wind for a little bit here, and I'm not going to cross the wind line just yet. I'm going to head now in the direction of where I want to go. 1,400 feet. This looks like a pretty good path to intercept my 1,200 mark, which I intend to be directly upwind of the target. This might be too far upwind, in which case I would overshoot a little bit, which I can solve by doing a bit of a turn or something. So 1,200 feet, boom, I'm exactly where I wanted to be. But now I'm going to adjust my drift angle a little bit so that I'm crabbing perpendicular to the wind line. If I intend to fly a boxy pattern where all my legs are square relative to the wind line, then I need to do this on the pre-base leg. If I intend to fly a drifting pattern, turning the downwind leg here, if I'm going to fly a drift pattern where I'm going to slide with the wind and not turn my canopy to perpendicular to the wind line, to a crab angle that would make me move perpendicular to the wind line, that would require being further upwind. So getting close to 600 feet here. And now I'm starting my turn a little early, always, especially when there's wind. I can drift here a little bit if I want to, but I have a feeling that I'm pretty close to where I want to be. Bringing back to the center line, I got a little traffic. And now I'm going to turn into final somewhere around 300 feet. Let's see where it's going to go. Not bad, right? So this is a pretty good path. I'm going to make little corrections primarily on the harness. And if I wish, I can pause the simulation and I can say, well, all right, here I am at 58 feet. I'm obviously not going to make it all the way to the target. So what could I do next time? I need to be sort of not drifting away so much on that base leg. So let's go back to the base leg where I allowed the canopy to drift. I'm going to start the simulation again and make that turn and keep going a little bit past 90 degrees. So I'm not drifting so much. See, now I'm moving perpendicular to the wind line. And even if I'm a little high here, not the end of the world. The bottom line is that I'm on the line. I'm headed towards the target. Let's see if I get a little bit closer. Looks like I'm going to be a little closer this time. And as I flare, that should float all the way to the target. Looking forward, getting ready for the flare. Spacebar, flare. All right, so less than 50 feet from the target. We also have the ability on Skydive VR to take a look at exactly. So if you notice, I sort of worked my way up and down the wind line doing experiments with my glide ratio and observing my location so that I can intercept 1,200 feet. It says as I was a little bit low, not by much. And here's my downwind leg, and here's that subtle drift away angle that I did. And if I had not drifted at all, if I had turned a little earlier or a little more, I would have been able to land directly on the target. But that's pretty good, right? That's a nice clean path into a tight landing area using a full box. And I actually flew a base leg, and I think that's vital. To actually spend time on a base leg looking down to the side at your target is when you can make those little adjustments that will get you to the target. But if you go downwind base final, there's no opportunity to make those adjustments. So please, even in a long skinny landing area, trust this box. It'll help you to sort of be confident that if you can fly yourself out in 300 feet of descent, you can fly yourself back. So therefore you can create that offset to allow for a really accurate landing. All right, well, check out Skydive VR, mention it to your coaches, mention it to your drop zone management that you want this at your drop zone. Yeah, and of course you can get your specific drop zone mapped so it's in the database, and you can do simulations at your drop zone with today's wind conditions. It's wonderful for student training, but I think it's great for everybody. So check out skydivevr.io on the internet and learn more about how to get this amazing simulation operating at your drop zone.
The thumb world. That's what I call that, the thumb world. It's the most closed thing. You know, if we were a flower, a human being texting is a closed flower. Like energetically in so many ways. I think that we need to just look at all these great exercises that do the opposite. You know, you're blossoming into this present moment. It's the mind saying, yes, I approve of this message. I approve of this activity. I approve of the role that I'm playing as I'm helping somebody tie their figure 8 knot before they climb. I approve of me checking your pin as we go to the plane. You know, I approve of the smile that we exchange in the door before jumping out. I agree with everything we're doing. I agree that this is what I intended for my life. What do you love about adventure? What do you dig about these experiences that, yeah, it could kill you? Kills people. All of these things do. And so does the couch. So does the, the couch probably kills a lot more people than parachutes do.
You gotta do that again.
I love my job.
I get a high